there are things that we need to be paying attention to in terms of our, interfacing with the other that we need to start addressing now. The human condition is being tested in a way that I think whether it's something that comes from the sky or something that we're creating that's going to be difficult to actually coexist with, we need something urgent.
Today we are talking about UAPs, a topic that I have been fascinated by, but sadly do not know a lot about. But it's great to be joined by these astrophysicists on the show and who have had some intrigue in this area. So, guys, I wanted to take a look at what's happening recently with UAPs, the phenomena of that. And in this episode, I think we're just going to take like a big picture look and just ask some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves in this point in time. So to begin, let's start with earlier this year. In June 2023, there was a military intelligence officer and whistleblower by the name of David Grush. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But he revealed a program within the Pentagon, a retrieval program of unidentified anomalous phenomena. And so let's start there, because I'm sure listeners are aware or were aware of this event happening, but it was in the context of all this craziness happening in our lives. So I wanted to propose that question to you guys of like, in the midst of everything else going on this year, right, there's so many other current events we could point to. All of a sudden, the House Oversight Committee has this thing. They have this hearing, and then this whole program about UAPs and stuff. And I know this wasn't the first time we're hearing about it, but it felt like a shocker to me. What did you guys make of that? And also, yeah, just like at this point in time, at this juncture, what impact does a UAP program or any type of phenomena in that realm, what impact does that have on us?
I think it's. I think it has a tremendous impact on a lot of things. Really, on the totality of reality as we understand it. And here's the reason why I say that. Number one, insofar as there are governmental agencies and broader structures involved in this and have confirmed some sort of involvement in this over the years, that leads us with two possibilities. Number one, the objective reality of UAPs, of unidentified aerial phenomena, right? That there is something there and it deserves a further inquiry, right? That's option number one. Option number two is some sort of mass distraction. There's a better phrase for that the government is using to kind of get the general populace onto a sort of a trail that leads away from something else that may be as equally significant, if maybe perhaps even more significant. So I don't know, but in my mind, those are the two options. Something big is happening. It's just a matter of one thing or another. I'll just start by framing it like that. Maybe Edwin wants to jump on in, and I could share a little more.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the first time I heard about the whole UAP phenomenon and what was happening with Congress was with the financial news aspect of it, where I'm sure folks haven't heard of Pippa Milgram, but she's a great strategist and advisor around what's going on economically. And just a quick aside, if you ever want to try to figure out what the truth is, follow the money, which is follow financial news, because it's in their best interest. We live in a capitalist, not only society, but I think in a capitalist world. So if you really want to understand what's going on, go to the financial news. These people, there's no better incentive for our world than making money. So those folks will
Real
make
quick,
sure.
Edwin, which outlets in the financial news sector would you recommend just for someone who has never dove into financial news before?
Oh, some of the basics are the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, Reuters, Financial Times. I would stick more to the global financial news, but a great start is like basically Wall Street Journal. Everyone gets that advice, but it's so true. Yeah.
So it was through this sector that you came across UAPs in an impactful way. Like
That's correct. Yeah, it was to your point, Louis, about a lot of the congressional concerns around what was happening there came to a peak recently with this news, but it's been happening over the past couple of years, and it's then that people started paying attention because, to Joe's point, right? I mean, that level of sort of urgency around the subject warrants that type of response. So that's what. That's why folks have been following, but it's been on a down low and even now it's still not as widely uncovered as it probably should be. But the whole idea of UAP is, by definition, is in its name, right? Unidentified aerial phenomenon, and it's something we don't quite understand. Which there's kind of two very scary reality around that, which is, one, there's technology out there that is probably, if it's here, means that it's far superior than anything that we have in the United States, which is cause for concern in of itself, even if it's human made. And then obviously the second is if it's a technology that's beyond us, then for various reasons, that can be a concern. We can come back to this because I've been thinking about this.
How do we discern whether it's like worth our time to explore like the recent news about UAPs? How do we discern that it's serious enough, or that it's like Joe was kind of alluding to, that this might just be a distraction from much more serious, urgent, and important things in our world? Like, what should we be asking ourselves or kind of processing as whether we're really interested in it or not? Like, what should we be doing in response to the UAPs?
Yeah, it's a good.
Edwin, go ahead, Edwin. Pick that up because I'm still thinking about that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe. I think this is we can't be too distracted from all of this, right? But what we do need to do is make sure that we're paying sufficient attention to not only this phenomenon, but what I think is happening. A lot of folks have made this reference of what happens from even a phenomenon that we've made ourselves, which is, a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence being a version of a phenomenon, right? We actually, quite frankly, we literally do not understand what's happening there. So let's say we were building a box, and all of a sudden the box started talking to us Pinocchio style, right? That is by definition a UAP, right? It doesn't have to be flying or anything, but that's a UAP. And the reality is that we, on all fronts, there are things that we need to be paying attention to in terms of our, interfacing with the other, that we need to start addressing now, right? So there's deeper philosophical, psychological, impacts that I think Joe could speak to, because it's the human condition is being tested in a way that I think whether it's something that comes from the sky or something that we're creating that's actually going to be difficult to actually coexist with. We need something urgent. I'd love to hear your thought on that, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. Within the field of philosophy, and just to give folks a little background here, philosophy, as we've perhaps said in earlier episodes, can be understood as an academic discipline that possesses many sub-disciplines, each of which can be distinguished in light of the kinds of questions that are being asked. So when we ask questions about knowledge, like how do we know what we know, or what is the truth in this regard, that falls under an area in philosophy called epistemology. And I think what Edwin brings up here is very insightful insofar as positing the question of the awareness or the lack thereof concerning the other, whatever the other may be. Whether it's unidentified aerial phenomenon or UFOs, right, flying objects, whatever the case is, or the coming forth of AI, right, from our own hands magically, it appears. These things require an epistemic mode or disposition of humility. I would articulate, right, that we have to be, in other words, very aware and in tune with what we do not know and remain there carefully. Now, what do I mean when I say remain there? I don't mean let's remain in a place of ignorance, but to really safeguard this awareness of what we do not know. Now, this again sounds somewhat abstract, so let's stay practical. What's the point of that, Joe, right? What's the point of remaining in the space or close to the area of what we do not know? The importance of that is that safeguards us from making certain epistemic moves without enough evidence, right? That would justify a certain belief. And evidence, whatever that word may mean, and we would need to qualify that, is key as we move from proposition to proposition to a particular rational conclusion. So we could jump the gun and say, oh, here's the answer to the UAP phenomenon. Here's the answer to how AI came about. And we can, by means of discerning certain patterns, arrive at a conclusion without careful analysis. So the importance of a sort of epistemic humility allows us to proceed carefully, cautiously in our thinking and in our analysis, which ideally safeguards us from particular errors, right? A small error at the beginning will lead to a greater error long term, right? As Aristotle will say, well begun is half done. But in order to do that, we have to fight against certain qualities of the human of the human being, right? We have a tendency to jump the gun and say, oh, I think this is this or it's that, and so again, a disciplined approach is key here. All that sort of being said, a little background there. It is interesting to think about UAPs in relation to AI, right? Given both the timetable of which both of these phenomena are coming about,
right,
and just thinking about the sort of unknown here. Of course, in one sense, we quote unquote are the creators of it, even though we have no idea how it came about. Let's say, and then the others, right? The UAPs, it doesn't seem like we have created, right? Possibly, maybe this is something else. This is a sort of large-scale international play game. But this, of course, begs the question, how could that be the case, given what we have been presented with as video evidence, right? So you see these things doing things that seem to defy, seem is the operative word here, though, to defy the laws of physics. And of course, we can go a bit further into that, but really weird and wild stuff. Yeah.
What you were saying, Joe, reminded me of the military's new website, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. It's AARO.mil, and basically the United States government released this website as like a just like a source of like, hey, like everything related to UAPs is going to be on this website. And I think just like the experience of like researching this episode was how I came across this website, and then going to this website and like, I don't know, I guess like,
how was that, dude? How was
right?
Like, I haven't checked it out.
On the one hand, I'll put it in the chat so you can see what I'm talking about it. Because it's like, on the one hand, I grew up on like early internet where it's like, I've seen the web 1.0 with like all the gifs of like aliens and UFOs and stuff and star background. Like it felt like that. But then I'm just like reminded, like, this is a legitimate government website that is like talking very seriously and honestly about UAPs in a way that is like the first time. It feels like for me, it's the first time that it's being legitimized, and I guess it's because I'm just like, like a person that wasn't interested in UFOs and UAPs prior to what's been coming out this year. And so it's just like, it feels like I'm in a new space, like as a person living in 2023, that before UFOs were able to be relegated into the margins on, it's like just like fringe ideas. But now it's like, even though there's not a definitive kind of truth or answer into the phenomenon that we're now seeing for the first time, even if like some of these clips are a year old, it feels like a new type of world in that there's just a bigger question mark in the sky versus before. And so I think that's what's tripping me up, because it's like, here's this area or topic in life that it didn't seem like it would have any sort of influence or significance on me personally. Like, I don't really have any connection to astrophysics, like to the night sky, to anything outside of that realm. But just the truth of the government releasing this website, like just that fact, even if everything else is completely bogus, like just the fact that there's this military website now documenting all of this, I think that has really, it's made me have to think harder about my worldview and my beliefs, even though I didn't like try to do that. Like I wasn't really seeking that out.
Yeah, and that's an honest assessment, Louis, and I appreciate you sharing that with us and our audience, because that's real, right? Yeah. I mean, it is real. When you're confronted with this, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Mm-hmm. It is a paradigmatically shifting event, right? It will shift one's world view if we allow it to.
Also, real quick, I just, because you reminded me, I remember when we first started talking about it, and the way that I was talking about the UAPs, like in my mind, it was only like one potential answer to the UAPs, which is like extraterrestrials of some sort, like some living creature outside of planet Earth, being like the origin of the phenomena. But then when I was talking to you about it, you presented like another potential scenario, which is like, not that these are extraterrestrials like within this reality, but that it's almost like it could be like another reality. I don't mean to like butcher
dimension?
what you were right, another dimension. Like, can you speak into that too? And also absolutely, because you have invoked the word astrophysics a number of times so far in our discussion. I did.
And rightfully so, understandably, right? Because again, what that does is it presupposes an alien here as extraterrestrial. And yet, when we see this phenomenon, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't sort of done any extensive study in this area, but every time we have in seen this by means of video and whatnot, or even personal testimony, they are terrestrial phenomenon. Indeed aerial, but they are terrestrial. And this is very interesting, right? Because why don't we see it in space? Why don't we see these objects with our Hubble telescopes and our, weird thing? And maybe we are, and maybe it's like, in backroom discussions, NASA and other governmental agencies, right? They've been noticing funky things, but it seems like it's within, right, the sphere of Earth. And so this raises some interesting questions. If they were aliens from a far off place, many, many light years away, we could ask ourselves certain questions within the domain of physics and astronomy. What kind of technology would they need in order to sort of do that, to arrive here? And then psychological questions, if that's even possibly applicable here as to, okay, they would travel, right, these aliens, right, come here, travel vast distances to then kind of like spy and play around with human beings, right? Check out military installation and kind of play tag with F-16 firefighter, and disappear, and all of these things. It's like, okay, possibly, but what do we, right? So this raises the question of the potential origin of these phenomena as being interdimensional. Right? And when you observe these objects, if we can even speak of it as such, they do seem to defy what we understand currently as physics, right? Classical physics, right? Going from zero to some crazy speeds, right? In a blink of an eye, disappearing, and then stopping in midair, and then melding, these objects melding together and then separating, and all of these wild things, right? Coming into the water, coming out of the water, no drag. There doesn't seem to be air resistance. There doesn't seem to be any propulsion system. These wild angles, right degree angles that it turns, and which would defy the law of momentum or inertia. Like, what's happening here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, again, just some things that raise questions here. Edwin, please jump on in. I know you have something to say here.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you were saying, Joe, and a sort of another type of phenomenon or origin point. To first say that, I think I'm just going to challenge you a little bit on the physics. From an engineering perspective, there are things that are possible beyond us, way beyond us, but are still possible from a laws of physics perspective, right? We just don't have the engineering capabilities today to even imagine what that might be. So I think a lot of the source of what is possible comes from science fiction, and I think there's some strong visionaries out there who are sort of steeped in the physics that can tell us what is possible. And that made me think, if you play out a thought experiment, right? You say, all right, understanding the laws of physics, the possibility of wormholes and some of the super luminal opportunities that might exist with the bending of space time, all of this, the Star Trek, right? Joe knows Star Trek a lot better than I do. If you really went into like the physics of Star Trek, for example, and you pushed it to its end, you start to get to some weird physics of time. And then time travel obviously is in everyone's imagination when you start to push those limits. So my question is, if that's true, why wouldn't, if we fast forward ourselves millions of years from now, I mean, assume it, maybe we go extinct, right? But if you fast forward ourselves millions of years from now and we eventually get to the bounds of physics, why haven't we seen time travel, right? Why haven't we interacted? Why aren't the aliens ourselves, right, coming back, periodically to visit us? Because that's what I mean. Like, just fast forward this tape millions of years. So either one, we've gone extinct, or two, the physics we think we understand is actually much more limited than we ever imagined, which means we were wrong. So there's two, right? Because eventually you're not going to stop a human from time traveling once the technology gets developed. Why? I mean, how is that possible, right? So that's where my mind is right now in terms of any phenomenons that are unidentified.
Yeah. It is the nature of science to remain open to new possibilities, new discoveries, and thus sort of updating of the current frame of awareness within that said science. And so therein lies the possibility of advancements that we cannot at this point even imagine. That being said, there isn't, and we can have this conversation, Edwin, as far as I'm aware, there isn't this sort of infinite plasticity with regards to science, such that whatever is discoverable now can easily be eradicated or reformed in some wild way in some here onto future. So, for example, using some things that we do know, right? Modern physics with the advent of Einstein and others. Let's think of Einstein's general theory of relativity, his understanding of the curvature of space-time and whatnot. Doesn't do away with classical physics, right? Doesn't do away with Newtonian physics insofar as Newtonian physics remains within an approximation and in the sort of lived experience of objects moving through space and time, right? So that general relativity and special relativity takes over when we get to extremely high density, weight, energy, you know all this, Edwin, right? And so there's this sort of add-on, not an eradication of one for the other. So that being said, let us think imaginatively, and Dr. Michio Kaku and others have done this with regards to, let's say, Star Trek, right? When physicists think of, they look at Star Trek and they look at these, and they say, okay, what is actually possible given what we know of science, right? Teleportation doesn't seem to be possible because of quantum indeterminacy, right? right? The warping of space-time, that's possible, right? To exceed light speeds, that seems to be possible for sure within the given physics. So these are the things, right? That then when people say, well, these aerial phenomena that are observable, no propulsion system, okay, possibly. Making these aerial maneuvers that would destroy any biological life inhabiting those ships or whatever it is, unless there are certain things like inertial dampening fields. That's something invoked in something like Star Trek, right? They're going from crazy speeds and they're not being thrown around, right? They don't have to harness themselves because there's these sort of inertial dampening fields, right? How do they explain teleportation in Star Trek? They have Heisenberg dampening systems, right, that allow for, right? So it's all of these things, right? But so these are possibilities, but it's like, okay, we do have to do a deep dive into the physics and to really think about, is this even, what would this mean if this is indeed possible? Of course, this raises a question, like you said, in sort of temporal mechanics, time travel, and all of that there. So Louis, this is a wild thing, man. This is a wild thing.
To the layperson, just kind of interested in this phenomena and the way, like for me, I'll put myself in this category. Like it's made me think more critically about epistemology, right? Like, how do I know what I know? And I feel like there's some value in that, even though I know I personally cannot find out all the answer, like try to figure out the science to all of this. I still feel like there is some value in just having my understanding of the world kind of challenged in this way. And I wonder if that is the value to the layperson, or if there's actually an invitation for something greater in this moment. You know, like if are we called to just the curiosity of the UAP phenomena, or is it like, in this moment, maybe the call is something more than that. Like, just like a greater pursuit more than just satisfying curiosity. Do you guys have any kind of thoughts or responses to that?
I love that one, Louis. I'm reflecting on what Joe said. Joe's right. Like it at some point we do enter this unknown zone, right? And the minute you said that, Joe, I started thinking about dark matter. It's like we literally can't see or interact with like X% of the universe, right? Wow. Yeah. Like theoretically, right? We like the periodic table don't even exist in that part of the universe. Wow. Which tells so that's why I love your question, Louis. It's like, how do we acknowledge the unknowns? And so that's where my curiosity sits. And honestly, that's where I start to embrace some of the metaphysics as a discipline, right? That I usually turn to Joe to, right? Because and to be honest, this is where philosophy becomes very instrumental in, helping our brain not to explode over the fact that we have, because there's charlatans that come out of this, right? And without the discipline, it's really hard to maintain any level of coherence. And so I honestly think that's where it is. So I'd love to hear your response to that, Joe. But also, going back to the point you made earlier about humility. This is where we do struggle. And I think that's what you're stating in your question, Louis. I love that question because what makes us so damn special in this point of time, right? So if you go back 100 years, 200 years, there's no computers, there's no quantum mechanics, there's no anything to those individuals, and how different are things 100, 200 years from then? Like, right? It's like the things that they couldn't even imagine with their science or anything, what we would be doing in 100, 200 years. They couldn't even, that problem, like what we're talking about right now, is like if like aliens, like we coexisted with aliens in about 100 years, right? As a possibility, right? And we made up new physics, right? And there was things that, like, that's 200 years. Yeah. So, like, what makes us any special that if we fast forward again 200 years, another 200 years, and so on? And by the way, this stuff is exponential, right? It's not linear. It's not like, oh, another 200 years, this magnitude of impact in terms of science and physics will be this. No, you're talking about like an exponent difference. And so then the humility necessary for that is I think what's key, and that's almost like another level of education than knowing. Right. I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. So, Joe, man, I'd love to hear your.
I can't help but think of Socrates here, who is, in a certain way, philosophically understood, is an idol smasher. What do I mean by an idol smasher here, right? What he would do by means of his questions is invite folks to see that what they thought they knew, they in fact don't know. And through a laborious process of questioning and unpacking assumptions and presuppositions, Socrates would invite folks. He would even see himself here philosophically as a midwife, which was his mom's profession. Wow. And he would also see himself as engaging in a bit of his own father's profession. His father was, I believe, a sculptor. And so the art of questioning, and through the use of questioning, helping people to see that though they may understand they may have some understanding of something, they may in fact need to tighten their definition and really recognize first and foremost they don't know, right? Right. So this is locked in his own affirmation when he says, I'm the wisest person insofar as I know that I know nothing. Right. So again, that epistemic humility as the ground from which we can spring forth into true wisdom, right? A humble recognition of our limits. And this goes directly to your point, Louis, that the usefulness of the UAP phenomenon, like any other phenomenon that stands before us as a deep unknown, the usefulness of it is that it could shock us and rattle us to the point, and now this is scary, right? This is why we tend to not want to go there, but to shock and rattle us to the point where we have to then resituate our own paradigms, our own mental models of the world, our own understanding of things. We can easily fall into an idolatrous attachment to what we think we know about the world, you see. And so the unknown, when we collide with the unknown, it forces us back on our heels and to reassess, requiring us to reassess what is it that we indeed know. And that's helpful, albeit it is scary. Yes, by means of our protective mechanisms, we do everything we can to not fall into cognitive dissonance, to not fall into these kind of areas of like, oh my gosh, everything that I believe or thought I knew is falling apart. But there's something deeply healthy, I would submit, in allowing ourselves to engage in the transformative process of being encountered by the unknown, so that our awareness and thus our orientation towards the truth is better situated, right? It's just going to lead us further into the truth of things. And remember, truth here, as I understand it, is always consonant with reality. It's always consonant with being, right? Truth is what is. And so if my understanding of things and what I think is true does not line up with some real set experiences out there, especially experiences of the unknown, then that threatens my appraisal, my notion of the truth. And maybe questions, oh, I thought it was true, it's not true, right? And so this, again, we have to fight against the natural instinct to defend our particular idols, to defend our position. We have to allow ourselves to be transformed through that process. It is a birthing process. Yes, it is painful and scary, but this is how we evolve. This is how we grow. And so if what I'm saying is true, then I think this gives us some tools to then reassess our own experience with things like whether it's AI or UAPs or whatever other, right? It's like, okay, that's okay. If what Joe is saying is correct, how have I been? Have I just simply been attempting to write off these unknowns with some said known? You know what I mean? It's like, wow, maybe I'm playing myself, right? But maybe there's something more to this,
right?
And that's what we are about, right? This podcast is explorations, and hey, if you're exploring, right, that means you're charting unknown. You're charting the unknown. You're pushing against the edge, right? And you're saying, okay, let's see what we can discover. So yeah, I think it has some real application to all of us in that sense.
Just very well said, Joe. And just to kind of round out this discussion, I wanted to give Edwin the last word. And Edwin, can you respond to what Joe said, and also in the context of our conversation about UAPs and just the idols that we hold on to, like what we know? Can you respond to that? Yeah, like what did you make of what Joe said, and what do you think of our discussion of like the intersection of UAPs, AIs, and epistemology?
Yeah, I have a bias here, but Joe, man, I wish you wrote your thesis on idolatry. Yeah. Man, that was so well said. I just wanted to deep dive into that. But the only thing I would add is that what it brought me to was the even from a solutions perspective, we started a podcast talking about education and ignorance. I think that's where we need to start to focus from that perspective. It's a shame that we've stayed so far away from innovation in that space, because we keep coming back to that problem, that root cause, and I think there's an opportunity there, and I would vote Joe to write the curriculum for that right away.
Thanks, bro.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We're going to continue having these deep dive conversations, so stay tuned for more episodes into this space. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.